Good afternoon/evening, students. Today, I'm going to explain to you this prompt right here, and I'm going to read through an example, one of the higher level examples that the AP company has so graciously given us to study. And I'm going to tell you what I think is good about it and what I think I would change to make it closer to a 9, because I'm going to be showing you an essay that's a score of an 8. If you want to open this up in the next tab, you actually have this PDF. The only thing that you don't have is the essay scores themselves. So just FYI. Okay, so the prompt that we are considering is an argument prompt. And as a reminder, for those of you who either weren't in class or don't remember things when I say them, an argument prompt will basically give you a slight bit of background knowledge. It will give you a quote, and then it will ask you to answer the quote in an essay. It will be a very, very broad prompt, and you will have to pull the evidence out of thin air, out of your life, out of your background knowledge. In my opinion, this is one of the harder essays for students to write because every student has an opinion, but most students don't have the background knowledge necessary to meld all of their opinions together into a well-written essay, which is one of the reasons why I'm highly encouraging you to read outside my class. Okay, let's get started. So here's our prompt. This is from the 2011 version B of the AP English and Language Composition exam. It is question 3. Notice that the question types are never labeled, but they have names. And this type is called the argument essay because you have to make an argument about the quote. I'm going to read the prompt to you, and then I'm going to go into explaining the example. So the prompt is, American essayist and social critic H.L. Mencken, who lived from 1880 to 1956, wrote, "The average man does not want to be free. He simply wants to be safe." In a well-written essay, examine the extent to which Mencken's observation applies to contemporary society, supporting your opinion with appropriate evidence. So again, you have to make an argument as to whether or not this applies to contemporary society, and pay attention here, the extent. So you could say, this applies to contemporary society in this paragraph, but it does not apply in this paragraph. So keep that in mind. All right, let's go to the next tab. So the essay that I'm going to be considering is actually a level 8. So essays earning a score of 8 effectively examine the extent to which Mencken's observation applies to contemporary society. The evidence and explanations used are appropriate and convincing, and the argument is especially coherent and well-developed. The prose demonstrates a consistent ability to control a wide range of elements, but is not necessarily flawless. So be aware of that. In order to get a 9, it has to be especially impressive in its control of language and especially sophisticated in its argument. So let's scroll down. Okay. What I'm going to do first, let's see how much time we have left. Yeah, we have time. Okay, I'm going to read the essay first to you, and then I'm going to generally talk about why I think it's effective in areas where it could be made to be closer to a 9 out of 9. When the planes hit the Twin Towers on September 11, 2001, the whole of the United States of America fell under an intense spell called fear. Everybody was ready to give up their own privacy to be protected from other possible dangers. When President Bush passed the National Security Act, it represented to what extent people favored being under surveillance and being safe than being free from the constant stare of the government's eyes. So you can see right here there's like a syntactical error because if you read it out loud, the sentence doesn't exactly make sense right here. So it's not perfect. As H.L. Mencken, a social critic, wrote, "The average man does not want to be free. He simply wants to be safe." He encompasses the human psyche in contemporary society that favors safety over freedom on the surface, but tries to be freed from the chains of society. So again, I would call this probably a run-on right here. Like I would probably start a new sentence. So just be aware of that. Okay. So this right here, the sentence that he starts after the quote technically is the thesis statement or your claim, the argument that you're making. So again, make it its own sentence. Here we go with our first body paragraph. Many people rejoice the American dream. Again, that doesn't really make sense. They love the idea that people have equal opportunities to find a job at a company, own a car, get married, have a family, and live in a suburban house. This dream embodies the human nature of wanting to conform and have a safe style of living than to live the way they want. Again, this person keeps struggling with the word than and how to use it in a sentence. Many work dull office jobs that offer no freedom. However, they'd rather work under an awful boss than be freed from the drudgery of their mediocre lives and have no job. So many people divert to a different path of life from the one they want to walk on. Again, this is slightly awkward sounding, because that means taking risks and being unsafe. Let me use my father as an example. Again, run on. This is a run-on sentence. Please avoid this. They're connecting two independent clauses with a comma. He spilled to me one night, again, that doesn't really make sense, after a hefty number of wine glasses, that he dreamed of becoming a pilot and had a choice to become one. This should be a period. However, when the moment came for a final decision, he chose law school instead because it seemed safer. I could see the decision he made 30 years ago still haunting him as he wistfully swirled the wine. He chose security over freedom and gave up the life he wanted to live. However, not everyone favors safety over freedom. Transcendentalists such as Emerson and Henry David Thoreau sought to break away from society and live under harsh conditions in the wilderness. I believe once in a while certain people start to raise their voices and strive to live in freedom. Take the hippie movement, for example. So again, two examples, transcendentalists and the hippie movement, and the connection is here. Young adults tired of the constricted and corrupt lives society forced them to lead dropped out of the system and chose freedom. The fact that every once in a while people begin to speak up shows that, in my opinion, people in their deepest part of their psyche crave freedom and to live the life they want to live. That's a little repetitive. Fear is one thing that oppresses this craving, and social propaganda in society and is another. Again, slightly awkward sentence construction, but it's an 8. Only when anger towards society and the need for freedom surpasses fear and society's expectations in one's mind, he or she will choose a path that favors freedom over safety. When H.L. Mencken made his statement, he was partly right. People do lead lives that their freedom, but in turn provides them with physical and financial safety. Again, However, under all of the fake contentment pasted on their faces, they wish to break out into the wide open ocean and set sail on an adventure in a sea of opportunities and new discoveries. Okay, so here's my analysis. How much time do we have? We have like 3 minutes for me to analyze it, so we're going to speed through. Okay, up here they do a really good job of like opening with an example. You don't have to do that. You could simply just like start with H.L. Mencken, and you could have moved this introduction somewhere else, but this was a nice anecdote and a little story to kind of explain how humans tend to prefer safety but still want to like break free and be hippies. I already told you separate this. Addressing the quote up here is pretty good. I get it because it sets the purpose for the entire essay. The American dream and referring back to the American dream and working a job and living in a house, dull office job. I think that works. I think that the personal example was good. In my opinion, from what I know from how these essays are typically scored, they are not always super impressed with personal examples. So I would try to pull examples from the news, literature, etc. Transcendentalists and Emerson totally makes sense. If you were talking about Transcendentalists and Emerson, you could actually refer back to Transcendentalist Emerson and Chris McCandless from Into the Wild, because he was really close to being a Transcendentalist. And he wanted to break free from the bonds of society and not be safe. So that would actually be a really good example. The hippie movement is a good example, that they're young adults tired of constricted and corrupt society. I wish that they had referred to Vietnam and how they were breaking away from Vietnam, but they weren't willing to risk their safety, that they wanted like freedom and they wanted safety, because I think that's important. But other than that, I thought that they did a really good job. Here, fear, oppressing, safety is also really great. So I hope this was helpful. And I will see you next class period. We're going to analyze this more closely. Have a great night. Bye.